The mahogany conference table stretched before me like a battlefield, and I was about to lose the war I'd been fighting my entire life. The will is quite clear, Attorney Davidson announced, his voice cutting through the suffocating silence of the law firm's executive conference room. Mr. Harrison Reed leaves his entire fortune, including Reed Industries, all properties and liquid assets totaling $2.8 billion, to his beloved daughter. My heart hammered against my ribs. After 26 years of being the perfect daughter, the dutiful heir, the one who sacrificed everything for the family business, this was my moment. Emma Reed, the attorney continued, and my world shattered. His stepdaughter. The words hit me like a physical blow. Emma, my half-sister who'd waltzed into our lives when she was 16, who'd never worked a day at the company, who'd spent the last decade partying across Europe while I bled for every percentage point of market share. What? The word escaped my lips in a whisper. Emma's perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth in mock surprise, but I caught the glimmer of triumph in her emerald eyes. Oh my God! I can't believe this! Diana, I'm so sorry. Sorry. She was sorry. I turned to look at the man sitting beside her, James Morrison, my fiancé of 3 years. The man who'd promised to stand by me through everything. His strong jaw was set, his dark eyes carefully avoiding mine. James, I breathed, searching his face for any sign of the love he'd whispered to me just that morning. Say something. He finally met my gaze, and what I saw there was worse than indifference. It was calculation. Cold, ruthless calculation. Diana? He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine before I jerked my hand away. I think we need to talk about our future. Our engagement was built on certain expectations. Expectations? My voice rose, years of suppressed emotions finally breaking free. You mean my inheritance? Don't be naive. James's mask slipped completely now, revealing the mercenary beneath. Love doesn't pay for the lifestyle we planned. Emma can provide that stability. Emma's hand found his arm jar, a gesture so intimate it made my stomach lurch. James and we've been talking about everything, about us. The room spun around me. Us? We're in love, Diana. Emma's voice carried a honeyed sweetness that barely concealed her venom. We have been for months. I tried to fight it, really I did, but now that I have the inheritance, she continued, her smile sharp as broken glass, there's no reason to hide anymore. I stared at them, my sister and my fiancé, sitting together like they belonged there, like I was the intruder in my own life. How long? The question scraped my throat raw. James at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Diana, it doesn't matter. How long? I slammed my hand on the table, making everyone jump. 8 months, Emma said quietly, stroking James's arm. Since the charity gala in Monaco, you were so busy with the merger talks and James was lonely. 8 months. I thought back to that gala. I'd stayed behind to finalise the Whitmore acquisition that had increased our company's value by 40%. The deal that had apparently made me worthy of inheriting absolutely nothing. You were screwing my fiancé while I was building the empire you just inherited. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Emma's face hardened. I built nothing, Diana, and maybe if you'd been less of a workaholic and more of a woman, James wouldn't have needed to find comfort elsewhere. The attorney cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should continue with the reading. There's more, I laughed, the sound hysteric even to my own ears. A personal letter from your father, Davidson said gently, sliding an envelope across the table. For you, Miss Diana. My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. Dad's familiar handwriting blurred through my tears. My dearest Diana, by now you know the contents of my will. I know this comes as a shock, but I had to make an impossible choice. You are strong, brilliant, capable of building your own empire. Emma is not. She needs this security, this foundation, in a way you never will. You have always been my pride, my greatest achievement. But Emma is fragile, and I could not leave her with nothing when I know you have the strength to create everything. Forgive a dying man's attempt to protect both his daughters. With all my love, Dad, I crumpled the letter in my fist. Protect Emma? What about protecting me? What about the daughter who'd given up college parties to learn the business, who'd sacrificed relationships, friendships, her entire youth to prove herself worthy? This is unbelievable, I whispered, then louder. This is fucking unbelievable. Diana, please, James said, actually having the audacity to look concerned. We can work something out. Emma's generous. She'll make sure you're taken care of. Taken care of? I stood so violently my chair crashed backward. Like a charity case, like a pet. Emma leaned forward, her voice dripping full sympathy. You'll always have a place at Reed Industries, Diana, as my employee. I'm sure we can find you a nice position in middle management. The condescension in her tone was the final straw. Everything I'd suppressed, years of watching her receive the affection I'd earned, the praise I'd deserved, the love I'd been denied, exploded out of me. You won't get away with this, I snarled, grabbing my purse. I don't care what Dadswell says. I don't care what games you've played. Reed Industries is mine by right, and I will take it back. Emma's laugh was like tinkling bells, beautiful and empty. With what money, sister? With what power? You're nobody now. Just another girl with a business degree and daddy issues? I stopped at the conference room door, my hand on the handle. We will see. Diana? James called after me, and something in his voice made me pause. For what it's worth. I did love you. Once. I didn't turn around. No, James. You loved what you thought I could give you. You never loved me. The hallway beyond the conference room blurred as I stumbled toward the elevator. 26 years of perfect behaviour, of being the ideal daughter, of sacrificing everything for a company that was now in the hands of a woman who'd never earned it. The elevator doors closed, and I saw my reflection in the polished steel. Red-rimmed eyes, pale skin, the ghost of the woman I'd been just an hour ago. The woman who'd walked into that room, believing she was about to inherit an empire. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sorry for your loss, but some graves are meant to be dug up. If you want the truth about your father's will, meet me at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at 3 p.m. Come alone. A friend. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Truth about the will? What truth? The elevator reached the ground floor, and I stepped out into the marble lobby of Davidson and Associates. Through the tall windows, I could see the city skyline, a view that included the Reed Industries building, its glass facade reflecting the late afternoon sun like a beacon. My father's empire. My empire. The company I'd bled for, the legacy I'd earned through 1,000 sleepless nights and sacrificed relationships. Now it belonged to Emma. But as I walked out into the bustling street, that mysterious text burning in my mind, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. Dangerous, desperate hope. Because if there was a truth to be uncovered, if there was something more to this story, then maybe, just maybe, this wasn't over. I pulled out my phone and typed a reply. I'll be there. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, I was going to play by my own rules. Riverside Cafe sat tucked between two towering office buildings, its warm brick facade a stark contrast to the cold steel and glass surrounding it. I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table where I could watch the entrance while nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. My nerves were frayed after a sleepless night replaying yesterday's devastation. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's triumphant smile and James's calculating gaze. The engagement ring I'd thrown at the wall of my apartment lay in pieces, much like my life. At exactly 3 p.m, a woman in her 50s approached my table. She was elegantly dressed in a charcoal business suit, her silver hair pulled back in a sophisticated chignon. Everything about her screamed expensive lawyer or high-powered executive. "Diana Reed?" Her voice was crisp, professional. I nodded, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. "You're my mysterious texter." Victoria Chen, private investigator. She sat down gracefully, placing a manila folder on the table between us. "I worked for your father for the last 3 years of his life." My breath caught. Worked for him? How? "He hired me to investigate Emma." Victoria's steel grey eyes met mine unflinchingly. "He suspected she wasn't who she claimed to be?" The cafe's ambient noise faded to a dull roar. "What do you mean?" Victoria opened the folder, revealing photographs, documents, and what looked like surveillance reports. "Your father met Emma's mother, Catherine Williams, when Emma was 16. Catherine claimed to be a widowed socialite from London, seeking a fresh start in America after her husband's tragic death." She slid a photograph across the table. It showed a younger Catherine Williams at what appeared to be an upscale charity event, her arm linked with my father's. Beautiful story, tragic widow, vulnerable teenage daughter, a kind-hearted billionaire offering them sanctuary. Victoria's tone dripped with sarcasm, except it was all a lie. My fingers trembled as I picked up the photo. What kind of lie? Catherine Williams isn't her real name. She's Catherine Morrison, James Morrison's aunt. The coffee cup slipped from my numb fingers, shattering against the tile floor. The crash drew stares from other patrons, but I barely noticed. "That's impossible," I whispered. "James and Emma just met at university." 3 years ago, when they started dating you publicly," Victoria interrupted, sliding another document toward me. "But they've known each other their entire lives. James isn't just Emma's boyfriend, Diana. He's her cousin. And this was never about love." The document was a bank statement, Emma's account showing regular large deposits from an offshore company. The amounts were staggering, and the timeline went back 7 years. "They've been planning this since Emma was 19, Victoria continued relentlessly. "The grieving widow act, the vulnerable stepdaughter routine, gaining your father's trust and affection. It was all orchestrated to get close to the Reed fortune." My world tilted on its axis. "But Dad's will, he wrote that letter, he chose her." "Did he?" Victoria pulled out another photograph. This one showed my father in his study, but he looked wrong. Thin, almost skeletal, with a vacant expression in his eyes. This was taken 6 months before his death. Notice anything unusual? I studied the image, my marketing-trained eye catching details. "He looks sick, but he was in remission, the doctor said." "The doctors were paid off. Your father wasn't in remission, Diana. He was being slowly poisoned." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Poisoned?" Victoria's expression softened slightly. "Small doses of thallium, administered over months. It causes cognitive decline, memory loss, confusion. In the final stages, victims become extremely susceptible to suggestion and manipulation." She produced a medical report from a private laboratory. "I managed to obtain samples of his hair for testing after his death. The levels were conclusive." I stared at the report, the words swimming through my tears. "They killed him. They murdered him slowly, methodically, while making sure he changed his will in Emma's favour." Victoria leaned forward. "Your father didn't choose Emma over you, Diana. He was chemically incapable of making that choice." Rage, hot and consuming, flooded through my veins. The letter, forged. I have handwriting analysis that proves it. She slid yet another document across the table. Emma's quite talented at mimicry, apparently. She practiced your father's signature for months. I thought of Emma's tearful performance in the conference room, her perfectly timed shock at inheriting everything. The Academy Award should go to Emma Morrison, master, manipulator, and murderer. Why are you telling me this now? I managed to ask through the fury choking my throat. Why didn't you go to the police? Victoria's smile was grim. I tried, but the Morrison family has connections everywhere. Judges, prosecutors, police commissioners. My evidence was deemed circumstantial and inconclusive. The case was buried before it could reach trial. So they just get away with it? My voice cracked with desperation. That depends on you. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying me with calculating eyes. How badly do you want your life back? What do you mean? She pulled out a small device that looked like a hearing aid. This is a micro recorder, nearly undetectable when worn properly. Emma and James think they've won, which means they'll get careless. Criminals always do, once they believe they're safe. I picked up the device, turning it over in my palm. You want me to record them confessing? I want you to get close enough to document their crimes. Play the broken sister, the defeated ex-fiancée. Let them gloat. Let them feel so secure in their victory that they reveal how they did it. The plan was dangerous, requiring me to swallow my pride and pretend to be the victim they believed me to be. But the alternative was accepting a life where my father's murderers lived in luxury, while I grieved in poverty. There's more, Victoria continued, producing a final folder. The Morrison family has done this before. Catherine and Emma have a pattern. Wealthy older men with daughters, mysterious deaths, convenient inheritances. You're not their first victim, Diana. You're just their most successful one. The photographs showed 3 other families, other daughters who'd lost everything to Catherine and Emma's schemes. Other women who'd believed their fathers had chosen love over blood. How many, I whispered, that we know of? 4 previous victims over the past 15 years. Your father was just the biggest prize. Victoria gathered the photos back into their folder. But he was also their first mistake. What mistake? He hired me. None of the others thought to investigate their new family members. Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. Your father may have been poisoned into changing his will, but his survival instincts remained intact until the very end. I stared at the micro-recorder in my palm, feeling its weight like a weapon. What happens if I get caught? Then you disappear, just like the investigator Catherine hired to look into their first victim. Victoria's tone was matter-of-fact, but her eyes held a warning. The Morrison family doesn't leave loose ends. The cafe around us had returned to normal. Conversations, laughter, the gentle clink of cups and cutlery. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that at this corner table 2 women were planning to bring down a family of killers. I'll do it, I said, my voice steady for the first time since yesterday's devastation. Victoria nodded approvingly. I thought you might. You have your father's steel spine. She stood, leaving the folders on the table. Everything you need is in there. Bank accounts, communication records, evidence of their previous victims. Study it, learn it, become it. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Victoria, why didn't my father tell me he suspected them? She paused, her expression softening. He tried to, in his own way, but by the time he hired me, the poisoning had already begun affecting his judgment. He wanted to protect you from what he was learning, thinking he could handle it himself. And Emma knew he suspected. Oh, yes, that's when they accelerated their timeline. Victoria's eyes hardened. Your father died 2 weeks after he asked me to dig deeper into Catherine's background. Not a coincidence. After she left, I sat alone with the evidence of my father's murder spread across the cafe table. My hands shook as I fitted the micro-recorder into my ear, practicing the gesture until it felt natural. Emma and James thought they'd destroyed me yesterday. They thought the broken woman who'd fled that conference room was defeated, finished. They had no idea they'd just awakened something far more dangerous than the dutiful daughter I'd been. They had awakened a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Diana, I know you're hurting, but we should talk. James and I want to help you through this transition. Dinner tonight? Your loving sister." I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face after so much grief. Time to give my loving sister exactly what she was expecting, a broken woman in need of comfort. Time to begin my performance as the victim they thought I was. Because the best revenge was the kind they never saw coming. I spent 3 hours perfecting my appearance for dinner with Emma and James. Red-rimmed eyes, smudged mascara, wrinkled clothes that suggested I'd slept in them. The micro-recorder nestled invisibly in my ear, and I'd practiced activating it with a simple touch until the motion became unconscious. The restaurant Emma chose was predictably upscale, Le Bernardin, where a single meal cost more than most people's weekly salary. She was making a statement. She had the money now, and I didn't. They were already seated when I arrived, looking like the perfect power couple in their designer clothes and confident smiles. Emma wore a stunning red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, while James sported a Rolex I recognised as one from my father's collection. "Diana!" Emma rose to embrace me, her performance flawless as always. "You look terrible, sweetie. Are you eating, sleeping?" I let myself sink into the act, allowing my shoulders to slump as I took the chair across from them. "I've been better." James reached across the table, his expression carefully concerned. "We've been worried about you. You just disappeared after the reading." I needed time to process, I said quietly, touching my ear to activate the recorder. Losing Dad, losing the company, losing my fiancé all in one day. "Former fiancé," Emma corrected gently, her hand finding James's. "And Diana, you haven't lost us. We're family." The waiter approached and Emma ordered for all of us without asking. Another power play. "We'll have the 7-course tasting menu and bring us your finest champagne. We're celebrating." "Celebrating?" I let my voice crack slightly. "New beginnings," James said smoothly. "For all of us." Emma leaned forward, her green eyes sparkling with barely concealed excitement. "Diana, I have wonderful news. James and I are getting married." I gasped, the shock genuine despite everything I now knew. "When?" "Next month," Emma practically purred. "We see no reason to wait, do we, darling?" James lifted their joined hands to his lips, kissing Emma's knuckles. "When you know. You know." "That's very fast," I managed, gripping my water glass to stop my hands from shaking with rage. "Well, when you inherit $2 billion, things move quickly," Emma laughed, the sound like breaking crystal. "Speaking of which, we've been discussing your future. Here it comes," I thought, the charity position, the crumbs from my own table. "We want to take care of you," James said, his voice oily with false sincerity. "You're important to us, Diana. You always will be." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "I'm thinking a position in Reed Industries' charitable foundation. Something meaningful, but not too stressful. Maybe $40,000 a year to start?" 40,000. They were offering me $40,000 to manage the charity that I'd helped create, which gave away millions annually. "That's generous," I whispered, playing the grateful victim. "We thought so," Emma beamed. "And of course, you'll have a small apartment in the corporate housing. Nothing fancy, but adequate." "You're being so kind," I said, injecting tremor into my voice. "I don't know how to thank you." No thanks necessary, James assured me. It's what family does for each other. The champagne arrived, Dom Perignon, 1996. I watched Emma's eyes light up as the waiter poured, recognising the vintage. It was from my father's private collection, worth nearly $1,000 a bottle. To new beginnings, Emma raised her glass, her smile radiant. To getting everything we deserve, James added, clinking his glass against hers. I raised my own glass with shaking hands. To justice. They missed the double meaning entirely, too intoxicated by their own success to catch the steel in my voice. As the meal progressed, they grew more comfortable, more careless. The champagne loosened their tongues, and their performance as the caring family began to slip. You know, Emma said, cutting into her perfectly prepared fish, I was terrified you'd contest the will. Contested how? I asked innocently. Dad was very clear about his wishes. James laughed, the sound harsh. Your father was confused at the end. The medication, you know, made him very suggestible. Medication? I tilted my head, playing confused. Emma shot James a warning look, but he was too drunk on champagne and victory to notice. The cancer treatment made him so weak, so easy to guide. Guide? James. Emma's voice carried a sharp edge. But James was on a roll now, his ego demanding an audience for his cleverness. Do you know how easy it is to convince a sick old man that he's making the right choice, especially when that choice benefits the people taking such good care of him? My heart pounded, but I kept my expression blank and sorrowful. I still don't understand why he chose Emma over me. Because I made sure he understood how much I needed him, Emma said, her mask slipping entirely. Men like your father, they want to feel useful, protective. I gave him a daughter who needed saving, instead of one who threatened his authority. I never threatened. Please, Emma scoffed. You were already running half the company. How long before you decided dear old Dad was too old-fashioned for modern business? James nodded sagely. Harrison saw Emma as his chance to maintain control from beyond the grave. A grateful heir who'd preserve his legacy instead of revolutionising it. But she will revolutionise it, won't she? I pressed, playing the concerned daughter. Emma's smile turned predatory. Oh, absolutely. James has such wonderful ideas for modernising Reed Industries, starting with selling off the dead weight. Dead weight? The charitable foundation for starters, James said, cutting into his steak with unnecessary force. Bleeding money on feel-good projects that don't generate profit. The environmental initiative, Emma added. Your father's pet project. Completely useless. I thought of the environmental program I'd spent 2 years developing, the one that had already prevented countless tons of pollution while saving the company millions in their efficiency improvements. And the scholarship program, James continued, warming to the subject. Why are we paying for poor kids to go to college? Let them get student loans like everyone else. Each word was another nail in their coffin, another piece of evidence that would destroy them. But Emma wasn't finished. The best part, she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, is that everyone will blame you when these programs disappear. Blame me, the bitter daughter who couldn't handle being passed over, Emma explained with obvious glee. They'll think you're sabotaging the company out of spite, when really we're just optimizing. James raised his glass again. To optimization. To finally getting what we've worked so hard for, Emma agreed. How long did you work for it? I asked softly. Emma's eyes gleamed with wine and triumph. 7 years of playing the perfect daughter. 7 years of listening to your father's boring stories and pretending to care about his lectures on corporate responsibility. 7 years of watching you get credit for our ideas, James added bitterly. Do you know how many of your brilliant innovations were actually mine? That merger strategy that made you look like such a genius? Mine. The cost-cutting measures that saved millions? Mine. You fed me business strategies. I kept my voice small, confused. Through Emma, James confirmed. She'd casually mention ideas at family dinners, knowing you'd present them to the board as your own insights. Emma giggled, the sound sharp and ugly. You were always so eager to impress Daddy, so easy to manipulate. But why go through all this? Why not just start your own company? James's expression darkened. With what capital? My family has connections, not liquid assets. Emma's charm only goes so far without financial backing. So we decided to take what should have been ours all along, Emma said matter-of-factly. Your father built his fortune on other people's backs. We just continued the tradition. The waiter appeared to refill our glasses, and Emma waved him away impatiently. The restaurant had emptied around us as the evening progressed, leaving us nearly alone in the dimly lit dining room. Besides, Emma continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, it's not like we're the first to see the opportunity in a lonely widower with a vast fortune. What do you mean? Emma and James exchanged a look, some silent communication passing between them. Let's just say, James said slowly, your father wasn't our first benefactor. There was Senator Whitmore, Emma said dreamily. Such a sweet old man. Left everything to his devoted stepdaughter after his tragic heart attack. And Judge Hartford, James added, another heart attack, very sudden, amazing how grief can affect a man's health. And businessman Robert Chen, Emma finished. Poor man never recovered from his wife's death, wasted away to nothing, but at least he had his loving family to comfort him in his final days. My blood turned to ice. They weren't just talking about inheritance scams. They were confessing to multiple murders. You killed them, I breathed, the words escaping before I could stop them. Emma's smile turned cold, and for the first time all evening, I saw the real woman beneath the mask. We gave them peace, Diana, just like we gave your father peace. He was suffering so much at the end, James said, his voice mockingly sympathetic. The confusion, the pain, we helped him let go. Helped him? A little something in his evening tea, Emma said casually, examining her manicured nails. Completely painless. He just drifted away. The micro-recorder in my ear felt like it was burning, capturing every damning word. I had what I needed. Confessions to multiple murders, conspiracy, fraud, everything. But Emma was still talking, her voice growing more animated with each revelation. The beautiful thing about inheritance law, she continued, is that once the will is read and probate closes, it's nearly impossible to challenge. Even if someone suspected the truth, proving it would require resources we now control. James nodded. And who would believe that sweet Emma Morrison and her grieving mother could orchestrate something so complex? Morrison? I let the name slip out, then quickly covered. I thought your last name was Williams? Emma's eyes sharpened, and I saw the exact moment she realised her mistake. The wine-flushed confidence drained from her face, replaced by cold calculation. I think, she said slowly, you've heard enough for one evening. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. James was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Deadly, predatory. You've been very quiet tonight, Diana, he observed. Very attentive. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to maintain the broken victim act. I'm just trying to understand how my life changed so quickly. Are you? Emma leaned back in her chair, studying me like a scientist examining a specimen. Or are you trying to understand something else entirely? The waiter approached our table again, but James waved him away sharply. We were alone now in the nearly empty restaurant, 3 people playing a game where the stakes were life and death. I think, Emma said softly, her hand moving to her purse, We need to continue this conversation somewhere more private. Emma's hand disappeared into her purse, and I caught the glint of metal. In that moment, I realised Victoria had been right. The Morrison family didn't leave loose ends. You know what I find fascinating about you, Diana? Emma's voice had shed all pretense of sisterly warmth. You always were too smart for your own good. James signalled the waiter, his smile never wavering. Check, please. We'll be leaving soon. The waiter approached nervously, clearly sensing the tension. As he set down the leather bill folder, I made my move. Actually, I said, standing abruptly and knocking over my water glass, I think I should go. I'm not feeling well. Sit down. Emma's command was quiet but absolute, her hand still hidden in her purse. We're not finished. I remained standing, my mind racing. The restaurant was nearly empty, just a few lingering couples at distant tables. The staff was cleaning up, paying no attention to our corner booth. Emma, please, I said, letting my voice shake. I just want to go home. I don't think you understand, James said, standing as well. You don't have a home anymore. The penthouse, Emma owns it now. Your bank accounts, frozen until the estate settles. You have nowhere to go, no one to turn to. Except us, Emma added sweetly, finally removing her hand from her purse. Instead of a weapon, she held a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. We're family, after all. My blood chilled as I recognised the vial. What is that? Insurance, Emma smiled. The same insurance policy we used on your father. Amazing how a few drops in the right drink can simulate a heart attack. Very believable, especially in someone under tremendous emotional stress. James moved to block my path to the exit. Grief is a terrible thing, Diana. It makes people do desperate things, like taking their own life when the pain becomes too much. They had it all planned out. My death would be ruled a suicide, the distraught daughter who couldn't handle losing everything. The recording device in my ear would die with me, and their confessions would remain their secret. But what they didn't know was that Victoria had taught me more than just how to gather evidence. You're right, I said, sinking back into my chair and letting tears flow freely. I have nothing left. Dad is gone, the company is gone, even you, James. I loved you so much. Emma relaxed slightly, satisfied by my apparent breakdown. It doesn't have to hurt, Diana. This way is peaceful. Like Dad's death was peaceful. I looked up at her with huge, tragic eyes. Will you at least tell me what his last words were? Emma's expression softened into something almost resembling genuine emotion. He said he was sorry, that he loved both his daughters, but he had to protect the one who needed it most. He really said that. Those were his exact words, James confirmed, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. He died, peacefully, thinking he'd done the right thing. I nodded, wiping my eyes. I'm glad he wasn't afraid at the end. Emma uncapped the vial. He wasn't, and you won't be either. Just one question, I said, my voice barely a whisper. How did you know I suspected something? Emma paused, the vial halfway to my wine glass. What do you mean? The Morrison name slip was obvious, I continued, my tone conversational. But you've been planning to kill me since before dinner started, so what gave me away? James and Emma exchanged glances, and I saw the moment they realised they'd been played. You never intended to offer me a job, I said, my voice growing stronger. You never planned to let me live long enough to be a problem. So what made you decide I was a threat? Emma's face went white. Who did you talk to? That's what I thought, I smiled, reaching into my own purse. You've been monitoring my communications, haven't you? You knew about my meeting with Victoria? Instead of a weapon, I pulled out my phone. Its screen showing an active call that had been running for the past 20 minutes. Diana Reed, case number 4, a 7B9X2, I said clearly into the phone. Confessions recorded. Subjects have admitted to multiple homicides and are currently attempting to administer poison. Send backup to Le Bernardin immediately. Emma lunged for the phone, but it was too late. Through the speaker came a familiar voice. NYPD dispatch, units are en route. Miss Reed, are you in immediate danger? Yes, I said, dodging Emma's grab and backing away from the table. Subjects are armed and attempting murder. The restaurant erupted into chaos. Other diners screamed and scattered as Emma overturned our table, sending dishes crashing to the floor. James tackled me, trying to get the phone, but I'd already sent it sliding across the floor toward the kitchen. You clever little bitch, Emma snarled, the vial still clutched in her fist. You think you've won? I know I have, I gasped, struggling against James's grip. Every word you said tonight was recorded and transmitted live to the NYPD. Victoria's people have been monitoring the feed since we sat down. Emma's laugh was hysterical. Then we have nothing left to lose. She lunged at me with the vial, but James suddenly released his grip on my arms. I spun away just as police sirens wailed outside the restaurant. Emma, stop! James shouted. It's over! No! Emma screamed, whirling on him. We've come too far to quit now. The front door burst open, and armed officers flooded in, weapons drawn. NYPD, everyone on the ground. Emma raised the vial above her head, her eyes wild. If I can't have it all, then no one can. She brought the vial down toward her own lips, but James caught her wrist. They struggled briefly before the glass shattered against the floor, its contents pooling harmlessly on the tile. Emma Morrison, James Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and the murders of Harrison Reed, Senator William Whitmore, Judge Robert Hartford, and businessman Chen Wei. As the handcuffs clicked around their wrists, Emma's gaze found mine across the chaos. This isn't over, she hissed. You have no idea what you've unleashed. Actually, I said, straightening my clothes as the officers led them away, I know exactly what I've unleashed. Justice? 3 months later, I stood in the boardroom of Reed Industries, watching the sunrise paint the city skyline in shades of gold and pink. The company was mine again, rightfully restored after the court invalidated Emma's inheritance, based on the evidence of fraud and murder. Victoria appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee. The Morrison trial starts next week. Are you ready to testify? More than ready, I said, accepting the steaming cup gratefully. How are the other victims' families? Senator Whitmore's daughter sends her thanks. Judge Hartford's son is finally getting closure. And Chen Wei's widow. Victoria paused. She wants to meet you. Of course, we survivors should stick together. Victoria studied me carefully. Any regrets about how it all played out? I thought about the question seriously. Emma and James faced life sentences for multiple murders. Catherine Morrison had been arrested in Monaco, where she'd been setting up her next con. The Morrison family's network of corruption was being systematically dismantled. The only regret I have, I said finally, is that my father died believing he was protecting Emma. He never knew she was the danger. He would be proud of you, Victoria said gently. You brought down a family of killers that had operated for 15 years. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see construction crews breaking ground on the new Reed Foundation building, a facility that would house our expanded charitable programs and environmental initiatives. Everything Emma and James had planned to destroy was not only surviving, but thriving. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your victory. You've made some powerful enemies, but also gained powerful allies. Welcome to the club of survivors. A friend. I showed the message to Victoria, who smiled grimly. The Morrison family had connections everywhere. Taking them down has made you some interesting friends in high places. And enemies? Oh, definitely enemies. But that's a problem for another day. I deleted the message and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Outside, the city was waking up to a new day, full of possibilities and promise. "Victoria," I said, an idea forming, "how many other families like the Morrisons are out there?" Her eyebrows rose. "More than you'd want to know." "Why?" "Because I'm thinking Reed Industries needs a new division. Corporate Investigation and Family Protection Services." I turned to face her fully. "Interested in becoming my partner?" Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. "Diana Reed, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." As we shook hands, I thought about the butterfly I doodled on my desk that day in high school, the one that had caught Willow's attention and started Makoto's paranoid spiral. Sometimes the smallest actions created the biggest changes. I'd lost everything and gained it all back through my own strength and intelligence. Emma and James had taught me that blood meant nothing without loyalty, and that love without respect was just pretty poison. But most importantly, they taught me that revenge was best served with evidence, patience, and a really good recording device. The war was over. I had won. And tomorrow, the hunt for the next Morrison family would begin.